is a mountain in eastern Turkey known as Mount Ararat. It's a beautiful mountain, towering 17,000 feet above the Turkish frontier. It is also the mountain believed by many to hold one of mankind's greatest mysteries. For ever since man first began to write, it has been written that Mount Ararat was the landing place of Noah.
You're listening to Canary Cry Radio, and here are your hosts, Basil and Gons.
Hey everyone, welcome to Canary Cry Radio. My name is Basil.
And this is Gons. This is episode number 59. Today we have a special guest, Aaron Judkins, who is a researcher. He's an explorer and professional archaeologist with a PhD in biblical archaeology. He's worked with human fossil footprints for 15 years and is credited with mapping the longest dinosaur trackway in the Western Hemisphere near Glen Rose, Texas. He's authored and co-authored several books, The Alien Agenda, The Return of the Nephilim, Evolution in Human Fossil Footprints, The Global Phenomenon of Human Fossil Footprints in Rock, and Academic Freedom, Exposing Evolution. And he was actually our guest back in episode number 36. It's Professor Aaron Judkins. How you doing?
Basil and Gons. How you doing, guys?
What's up, dude? I've told Gons this before, but I'll just say it here on the air. You're like the Indiana Jones of our, genre of, I don't know, study, I guess. So it's always very fun and exciting to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me back on. I always enjoy doing the show with you guys. Thanks for the accolade, by the way. The Indiana Jones thing is real life is funner, I think. You don't have the bad guy shooting you, and that's good, but I really enjoy doing archaeology. The day that I have a big boulder come rolling after me, okay, I may just throw in the towel at that point.
I guess in reality, it's a little bit less stressful on the danger side of the adventure there. I've always been told that adventure is just danger with a cooler name. So there you go.
Yeah. When I saw that movie, Indiana Jones, first time, I remember seeing that movie. I never thought, though, I would actually be doing archaeology in the field at that time, and here I am doing this work, and that persona kind of follows you, and I've just learned to embrace it in a way. But every good archaeologist has to have a hat. And I have a hat. It goes with me all over the world. But what's funny is that when I went on my latest expedition to eastern Turkey on Mount Ararat in search of Noah's Ark, guess what I forgot at home?
Uh-oh.
Not your hat.
No.
I forgot my hat.
No.
Oh. I did. I forgot it.
Did it affect your discoveries at all? Did it?
It did.
Did you feel
it? Did. It affected the whole expedition. Yeah, it did. It really did. I wasn't the same. I mean, I was missing something, and there was a part of me missing, and it just ruined the whole expedition. I couldn't do anything. I really did leave my hat. I couldn't believe it, and here I am. I'm being filmed, on a major documentary, and I don't have my hat. It was wrong. It was just wrong.
Oh my gosh. Well, I could definitely tell that could have some serious repercussions, and especially in a scientific finding sort of way. You never know when something's buried underground and you're just about to find it. It looks up at you. It's like, that guy's not wearing a hat. Nope.
And not to mention the fact that I'm losing a lot of my hair, and so I use it to hide my head a lot of times as well.
Right. Well, that doesn't help.
Yeah, we did find. That hat's been all over the world with me. I have more than one, by the way, and I just didn't bring any of them. It's just stupid me.
By the way, thank a lot for your voicemail we got there a few episodes back. We played it at the beginning of one of our episodes there. It was good to hear from you. And it reminded us that we got to get you back on here and hear about your adventures. So now, when you left us that voicemail, you had just gotten back from where? Mount Ararat?
I was over in eastern Turkey for 6 weeks, and we just completed a major expedition in the search for Noah's Ark, and working on a major documentary. And let me tell you, that was probably one of the hardest expeditions I've ever been on in my life. I knew it was going to be hard, but when you get over there and you see the thing, it was about 4 or 5 days before I actually got to see the summit. It's always socked in by clouds and can't ever see the top. And about 4 or 5 days after I got there, finally got to see the summit. It's a clear day, beautiful. I got to see the top of the mountain, and my heart sank because I realized I'm fixing to have to climb this mountain 7,000 feet. And even though I had prepared and trained hard for 3 months, and I knew what I was getting into, but when you get there and you see the thing, it's just intimidating.
Right.
And but yeah, it was a great adventure.
That's funny. Now, okay, so you got to this place, you didn't have your hat, you found out you had to climb this huge mountain. So what exactly were you looking for? You're looking for Noah's Ark. What kind of equipment did you have with you that you had to hike up that mountain with?
Yeah, well, this was the search for Noah's Ark. It was one of the last major pushes. I was invited to come on the team as a consulting archaeologist, and this was probably the most comprehensive and scientific expedition in the search for Noah's Ark ever. And that being said, this was all hands on deck, and we wanted to do as much work as we could. And it took a lot of effort. Logistically, it was an incredible amount of equipment work to get everything that we need, just prepare to make the summit on the mountain. And then we had the film team as well. I think we broke the record for bags and luggage and equipment at the summit of Mount Ararat. I don't know about any other mountain, but I think we broke the record at least for Mount Ararat. We had a lot of equipment that had to go up, and so logistically, it was quite complex. But we did it. We managed, and we got to the top.
Now,
Right.
I know that a couple years ago, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Randall Price.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that he had tried to do a similar expedition up there at Mount Ararat, and I know he had a lot of trouble getting these sort of credentials and working out some of the logistics as far as getting allowed to even go up there, and then also the weather. I recall Dr. Price talking about how difficult it was and challenging it was because of the weather and some of the even some of these sort of pirates, these sort of like gangs that kind of come after you if you're not careful. Did you run into any of that?
Oh yeah, well, Dr. Price he's our lead archaeologist on this project. So it's the same expedition. Now, this was my first year to go. Dr. Price has been on the project for several years now. I had actually been invited about 3 years ago in 2010 to attend the excavations and the expedition there in eastern Turkey, but was not able to go, unfortunately, at the time. It takes money to go, and it takes some time, and both of those factors were not allowing me to go in 2010. But I had always stayed up to date on the research. However, in 2013, that changed, and I was able to go. This was the last major search for the Ark, and I'm going to be on it, no matter what it takes, and I'm going to do this. And so, I expected to meet Dr. Price in eastern Turkey. However, he wasn't able to get there, and matter of fact, I called him from the summit after we got to doing the drilling up there through the ice and the glacier, and he was on standby to come had we found some ample evidence, some pretty hard concrete evidence for him to show up. And that's a hard mountain to climb. And Randall's, I don't know how old he is, but a lot of these guys have climbed the mountain several times, and it's just not an easy task to get up there. That's for sure. But yeah, Randall's right that this mountain has a permanent ice cap on it, multiple glaciers. It's 200 feet thick in some areas, covering some 22 square miles. And this ice goes from the summit down to about 13,500 feet. Now, the summit's about 17,000 feet. It's one of the largest land masses on the Earth, and I didn't know that. The weather it plays a factor. It sometimes it goes from clear, and then 1 minute it goes to cloudy and snowing.
Wow!
At one of the 14,000 feet camps there on the mountain, it just started sleeting and snowing pretty quickly. So, and then of course there's lightning, there's glaciers, there's crevasses, there's wild dogs, there's boulders, and there's there's some skirmishes between the Turkish military and the PKK that are there on the mountain. And now this year there was a truce between them, and so although we heard rifle fire sometimes, but the truce was holding while we were there, thank God, and there was no active fighting that we know about there. So it can be quite dangerous. And Randall's right. There's a lot that goes into it. And some years they may say you can go and you get there and they won't let you on the mountain. They know where you're at all times. They know who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing. They're always watching you, but it's quite dangerous to be up there. There was a Scottish climber about 2 years ago that went missing on Ararat. He was climbing up there by himself, and which is not what you're supposed to be doing. Now, I don't climb mountains for fun. There's mountaineers and there's alpinists and people who do that for fun. I don't do that for fun.
Right.
I did it because I had to, and I had to climb that mountain. But look, that's some pretty hard stuff. And these guys go and climb. But one of the golden rules in climbing, I understand, is you don't climb by yourself.
Right.
And unfortunately, this one particular man had done that, and then now he's gone. He's missing, and they'll probably never find him.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. So now this obviously was physically a crazy thing to undertake. But so what is the whole theory? What's Dr. Price's theory, and what were you hoping to accomplish up there? And what sort of, experiments or what sort of actions were you actually taking, and why?
Well, going back through history, there is some 500 ubiquitous flood legends around the world. And they're very impressive histories that are passed down. And it's even coded into the Chinese language. So, for example, the Chinese word for a large ship is 8, and persons and boat. So their word for large ship is 8 plus persons plus a boat. So this is found all over pretty much in every culture of the world. And there's a lot of flood stories. You go back to the Epic of Atrahasis in 1635 BC, and the famous Epic of Gilgamesh. And so you have a lot of history, including Josephus in the 1st century, and Jerome, and a lot of these guys. And within, I guess, the last 200 years or so, there has been multiple eyewitness sightings. Now, our job is to go and try to confirm if people are seeing anything on Greater Ararat. There's been reports, incredible reports, I might add, from people like Ed Davis in 1943, who said he was taken up to see the Ark. Colonel James Irwin, who is our Apollo 15 astronaut, and he says he flew over a structure while flying in the military, and he was so convinced that when he retired out of the military NASA, he made some half a dozen trips to Greater Ararat in search of Noah's Ark. So people are seeing something up there. So there's been a lot of expeditions to see if they can find something And so our job is okay. Let's take all this history. Let's take the best known evidence that we have, combine it with satellite technology and ground penetrating radar technology, which you have to get to the top, by the way, when you use that. And let's throw all the science that we can. Let's take people from multiple disciplines and let's throw everything we have at this and see if we can't confirm at least, a structure on Greater Ararat and verify it. So our job was to confirm and verify and document if there's something up there. And that's what we set out to do.
And you were filming the whole thing. You had a film crew with you. Now, what is that, a Discovery Channel crew, or who'd you have with you?
Well, we had one of the major documentary film crews. I can't release who they are yet, but it's one of the major networks, and they accompanied us on our journey to document this whole thing from start to finish. And these guys were really incredible, and great guys to work with. They've had experience in climbing. They were kind of a conglomerate. Some had worked for the BBC, some had worked for the History Channel in the past, and National Geographic. So they had been around. They know that field, but they're experienced in mountaineering, and so these guys went up to document and just to basically tell the story about the search for Noah's Ark, and so I'm really excited to be a part of that, be a part of the history.
Right. So I guess you're saving some of the good stuff to come out on the documentary there, and you're not going to let us in on your findings.
Well, I can talk about some things in general. The documentary will be out in the spring of 2014. And it seems funny that 2014 seems to be, the central theme seems to be about Noah's Ark and the flood. There's several documentaries coming out on this. Couple of independent documentaries coming out. Of course, there's the one Hollywood movie that's coming out with starring Russell Crowe. Now, that's not going to be factual by any means, and it's not going to be probably anywhere close to the biblical account. But the theme, nonetheless, seems to be, pervading for 2014. And this just happened to be something that we were doing, and it's fallen in line with all this other stuff. So that's quite interesting. But this documentary is going to be out, and it's going to tell the story. I'm really excited to see. I haven't, of course, I was in the thing, but to sit back and see how this is all put together is a whole nother thing. And so for me, it was quite a journey to just see how all that's being done, and to be on both sides, in front of the camera and behind the camera. It was kind of neat to see that,
Right. And to my understanding, this Noah's Ark movie, the blockbuster coming out, they portray Noah, played by Russell Crowe, as a environmentalist of some sorts, to my understanding. So we'll see how that turns out. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's hilarious. I had not heard that.
Yeah. Wow. So
that's funny.
So, we don't know how much you can get into, but if I recall correctly, because I remember, looking into a lot of what Dr. Price was doing a couple years ago. The Ark was seen in a glacier type situation, and I guess it was split in half, if I recall correctly, or something to that degree. What are some of the eyewitness reports that people have reported that you guys were looking for, that gave you guys the clues as to what to search for, what to look for?
Oh, sure. Well, if we just fast forward to the modern searches and sightings, there's some 200 sightings. They go back to 1904. By the person named George Hagopian. And George Hagopian, he was an Armenian that claimed to have seen Noah's Ark at least a couple of times when he was a little boy in 1904. And he says that his uncle took him up there. It took him about 8 days to get up there. And he describes seeing a structure up there. And he was interviewed in 1970 to tell about that, what he saw. There's other accounts, but one of the most detailed accounts is from Ed Davis in 1943. Now, Ed Davis was a U.S. sergeant in the Army Corps of Engineers during World War II, and he befriended a group, a family there by the name of Abbas, and he did some favors for this family that really not only helped the family, but helped the entire village, and they were really indebted to him. They felt indebted to him. And as a way to honor Mr. Davis, they decided to take him to what they called the Holy Ark. And so the Abbas family, the leader of this village, sent his grandson up. I think it was a son or his grandson, but sent his family up to see if the Ark was visible. They came down several days later and said, yes, it was. And so Ed Davis gives this detailed, incredible account in this description of seeing the Ark broken in two pieces. It is what now is known as the Ed Davis Valley or the Ed Davis Canyon. And he said that he didn't get to go all the way to it. They couldn't reach it, but he saw it from a close distance, and he described it as being in two fractured pieces. And one of those fractured pieces is one of our target areas that we were looking for. Now, unfortunately, since 1943, a lot of ice, and I'm guessing between 60 to 90 feet of ice has filled that valley. So, when people ask, why can't you just hike up there and see it? And well, number one, it's not easy to get up there to there, and it's under a bunch of ice. A great example of that is in 1943, the very same year, the military had to abandon some aircraft in Greenland during World War II. They ran out of fuel. They had to ditch the planes in Greenland. They had to leave them there. And since 1943, those aircraft was buried under some 260 feet of ice. But they found them. They found those aircrafts. Now, they had moved, because they were in a glacier, they had moved some, I think, half a mile to a mile from their original location. But they found those aircrafts, and they got them out intact. And they took them out piece by piece. So is it plausible for that canyon to be filled with some 60 to 90 feet of ice? And the answer is yes. It is. So, and of course, there's satellite technology that, indicates that it may be broken in more than two pieces. So if there's anything there, it's being fractured. Now, the Hoary Gorge blew in 1840, which is it's deeper than the Grand Canyon. I think it accounts for like a quarter of the mountain being blown out there. So, matter of fact, it destroyed one of the monasteries at the base of the mountain. So prior to 1840, people were saying, well, in the written history, that they saw it intact. After 1840, they're describing it, such as Ed Davis, in several pieces now.
That's amazing. So that's sort of the legacy of evidence and tales that have led up to your guys' recent experience up there. Now, it's obviously been a huge deal for people to get up and take a look at the Ark, or what people claim is the Ark. Now, why can't somebody just jump in a helicopter and fly up there and take a look? Why does it have to be such a big expedition?
Oh, well, that's been done, actually. Now, in the past, in the late 80s, early 90s, that has been done. It's hard to, number one, historically, the fighting between the Turkish military and the PKK, which is the Kurdish freedom fighters fighting for what they call Kurdistan independence, has created havoc on the mountain. So any military or any aircraft flying around the mountain, because the PKK control that mountain, typically gets shot down. They shoot first and ask questions later. So that has made it very difficult to fly. Secondly, to get up high enough, you have to, you really have to have a helicopter. You can't do it in a fixed wing aircraft, because you really need to be able to hover and fly around. And in a fixed wing, it's harder to do that.
Right.
But in a rotor aircraft, you can. But the problem with a rotor aircraft is that, number one, the air is very thin up there. And when you have to get up to 14, 15, 16,000 foot in a helicopter, you're in danger of losing lift.
Right.
And so the air is very thin, and it's very difficult for a helicopter to fly that high. And number three is that the winds are just ferocious up there. The team told me a couple of years back that while they were on the summit, the wind gauge broke at 100 miles an hour, totally destroyed the tents, and we nearly lost some team members that year.
Wow.
So it's the winds are just ferocious, and when you get into winds like that with a helicopter, it makes it very dangerous because they can slam that helicopter into the mountain. And then plus the aircrafts that was used at the time was some old Russian Sikorsky helicopter aircrafts, and they're huge. They're huge aircraft. So there's a lot of factors going into just flying around. It has been done, and a number of sorties, if you will, were flown around the mountain back in the late 80s, early 90s. But it's just so hard to see something from the air. You've got clouds, and you're way above it, and you really need to be hands-on at eye level on the mountain to really confirm and verify anything. And
Right.
from the air, maybe you see rocks that you think is a structure. It's just really hard, other than some great aerial photography maybe, it's really hard just to confirm anything from there. Now, what we wanted to do was take a remote, what do you call,
Like a
little
drone
helicopter,
type thing.
put a GoPro on it. Yeah, we wanted to fly that thing in and get some aerial footage up in there, but unfortunately we couldn't get it past customs, and so they wouldn't permit us to
What a
have it in.
strange thing. That's interesting.
Well,
Now-
yeah, to them they call it a drone, and we try to.
So now, okay, so without giving too much away, I mean, let's just say you go up there, you do some drilling, you take some samples, you find the Ark, and you can, and now it's in a documentary and you put it on TV. This is all hypothetical. I don't know exactly what you found, but now what kind of impact do you expect? I mean, obviously finding the Ark, Noah's Ark, has got to be a huge thing for the world. I mean, that would sort of, if you can definitely say that is the case, and let's just say you find some, I don't know, fossilized zebra poop or something to like really, really set it in there.
Right.
What does that mean for the world, in your opinion? I mean, obviously, it's got to be huge, right?
Oh, well, I can't say that we found the Ark. You'll have to wait for the documentary to come out. But look, when the Ark is verified and discovered and can be confirmed and objectively and independently by others, 100%, it will be a game changer. It's going to change everything we know about history. It's going to change everything we know about archaeology. Because look, if that structure, even a part of that structure is up there, and it fits the description of Noah's Ark given in Genesis. People asked Ed Davis when he was telling about his account. They said, "How do you know that was the Ark?" And Mr. Davis said, "Well, I don't know for sure. There wasn't a sign next to it that said it was Noah's Ark, but I can tell you it was a wooden boat and it had 3 structures on it, 3 levels in it. And what is anything doing up there like that? It'll change everything we know about history, because if it confirms the Genesis account, it means that those 500 ubiquitous flood legends around the world in almost every culture of the world isn't legend now. It moves the legend to fact. It's hard, concrete evidence that's empirical, that can be verified, and it'll change everything we know about history. Because look, it's going to change the course of archaeology. It'll change zoology, geology, paleontology. It'll change all those ologies, if you will,
right?
Because it'll show, hey, that is true. There is something up there. It'll change the course of what we know, or it should change what we know, and it'll make people draw a conclusion. Either, hey, okay, well, I believed it, but now I have some evidence to say that it's fact, or it'll tell people, you know what, I don't care what they found up there. Doesn't change my belief. I'm going to believe what I want to believe, and it's not going to make me change my belief in the Bible or Christianity. It'll force people into either in one of those camps, philosophically, theology wise, and I think it'll be one of the greatest finds ever in archaeology. It'll be one of the holy grails. Of course, the Dead Sea Scrolls was pretty much the number one archaeological find up to date, which was found in the 20th century, in the 1940s. That still holds.
Right, but
and
even
so
this,
it changed the face, of course, of archaeology.
Yeah, I would even argue that this would be even greater. Whereas the Dead Sea Scrolls are, a version of, sort of what we have now, but a written literary piece of evidence to some things we need. Well, Noah's Ark would be physical, actual evidence to back up the stories and the literary things that we find all over the world. So I think this, in my opinion, would be even a bigger game changer.
It would be. It would be the biggest game changer of them all. This would confirm Josephus' writings and his antiquities in the first century. It confirmed Jerome. It confirmed all those ancient historians. It would confirm Ed Davis in 1943 and Hepgonian in 1904. It would confirm all these stories of people seeing something up there. And I think you're right. It would be the biggest and greatest archaeological find ever. And that's why it's so important, because look, mainstream's not going to go look for this. You have to be out of the box. You have to think out of the box, and you have to be willing to have your paradigm challenged. Now, for me, I believe the Bible already. I believe in Genesis, so I don't have to find the ark. I believe that it's there. Now, as a scientist, I need to confirm with some empirical data that I can prove my point. But as a belief system, I don't have to have that. It's called faith. And so I believe that, but it just doesn't hold as great a weight if you don't have the evidence for non-believers and people who are not Christian or atheistic or agnostic, etc. So that is one of the reasons why we are looking to see if we can confirm this, because most archaeologists, most geologists are not going to go do it.
Right.
I'm willing to go do it. I'm willing to go see if we can find it, because look, what happens if we do find it? What happens if we do confirm it?
Yeah.
It's going to be one of the biggest things ever.
Yeah, and what a timely moment to find it too. I mean, if this is something that happens soon, there's already so much jibber jabber on mass media because of the Hollywood movie Noah's Ark coming out. It's already kind of a punchline. This guy put a bunch of animals on a boat and God killed everyone else, and what a crazy story these Christians believe, But if the actual thing is found at such a timely moment in history, it could have earth-shattering consequences, at least in my opinion.
Well, even the natives over there around the mountains of Ararat. Now, the Bible does say that the ark landed on the mountains of Ararat, which is plural. Doesn't mean that it landed on Greater Ararat. And we have people who think that it landed on Mount Judy in Iran. We have other people that says it's not there. It's at another site about 30 miles from there that Ron Wyatt claimed to be Noah's Ark. I went to that site, and unfortunately, it's not Noah's Ark. I'd be the first one to stand up and proclaim it from the mountaintops. That's it, because that saved me a trip up the mountain and put my life in danger. I mean, but unfortunately, it's just a natural geological formation. I know there's still people that advocate for that, and they full-heartedly believe that's Noah's Ark. But independent geologists have gone, and archaeologists, and they just can't confirm it. It's just a natural formation. But even the people over there, Ararat means it means the region of 8. And even a lot of the towns and villages are named after Noah and his sons, and the whole thing pertaining to that. So it's quite amazing that this is one of the oldest written stories that we have in our history. You know what's amazing to me, though, that in Matthew 24, it says, "For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man."
Yeah.
Because in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. And then the day when Noah entered into the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and then swept them away, right? So will be the coming of the Son of Man. That's Matthew 24:37, I think, through 39. Now, here's something very interesting. If Noah's ark were a fragment or a section of that, it is found on Greater Ararat in eastern Turkey, confirming the biblical account in the book of Genesis, that may play in helping fulfill end-time prophecy. Well, when I realized the significance, the impact of what this is going to do, if and when it's found, it's going to be staggering, because this may help usher in what we know in eschatology in the book of Revelation, this whole Matthew 24 prophecy coming to pass. And look, that will be a testimony, frozen in time for some 43 to 4,500 years, waiting just at the right moment for someone to come find this and to confirm it, and for God to reveal it in his time, and to say, look, this is true. What happened back then, this is true, and what's coming down the pike is going to be true in Revelation. Wake up.
Yeah, and that's actually sort of the direction I wanted to take it, because if this thing is found, I would imagine that the conversation about the Nephilim is a close second, if you will, to the topic of the ark, because, you know, the questions will come up. Well, really, why did the flood happen? And even within the church, you know, there's a back and forth going on with, you know, this doesn't matter, or we were just running around bad people, so God wiped us out. Where others believe more that, you know, there was something going on with a gene pool, you know, contamination with Satan going around trying to ruin the messianic line so that the Redeemer can't come. And so there's different views on this. I would imagine that whole paradigm of the Nephilim paradigm, if you will, is going to, you know, become a very important conversation, as it already is. But if the ark is confirmed, I mean, that's going to, I think, even make those discussions even more heated, I would imagine. But I have a couple questions. One's a little bit more, I guess, mundane if we're, you know, start talking about the Nephilim. But you mentioned geology. What is the scholastic view of, you know, the geological history of the area? Because if the ark did land somewhere around the mountains of Ararat, that means the water, right, was covering. I mean, you said you were 14,000 feet up, so I would imagine, you know, several thousands feet were covered in water at one point. Is there any geological evidence to suggest that? And what's sort of the scholastic view of you know, how that area was formed?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. Now, I'm not a geologist, but I know a little bit about it.
Right, yeah. I know you're not, but I just wanted to, you know, poke your brain, see what you knew about it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Hey, let me see if I can answer it. The mountain, Greater Ararat, is at just under 17,000 feet. Now, what geologists have told me is that they think at the time of Noah's flood, and if you say 43 to 4,500 years ago, guesstimate, okay, that mountain was not 17,000 foot at that time. They estimate it to be maybe 10,000 foot at the time, because of that mountain is actually volcanic in nature, and it tends to grow over time. It tends to thrust upward over time. So what they have told me is that it's not as high as it is now. Is about 10,000 feet is what they're estimating. However, the Bible does say that the flood waters went over the mountaintops, and so there is evidence for when I was at one of the mountains, not on Ararat, but one of the local mountains nearby. I was about a mile up, and I found indexed fossil marine shells up there on the top of that top of that mountain. I collected a bunch of them, and I have them. Those are only laid in a sedimentary deposit. Now, the standard view from mainstream geologists is that the Earth was formed in, say, billions of years in the geological record. They measure it in billions of years and millions of years. So the universe, they measure in billions of years. The geology and the rock strata and the fossil record, they measure in millions, hundreds of millions of years, which is a process they call uniformitarianism, that everything was laid down in very uniform, very slowly, very gradually over millions and millions and millions of years of eons of time. And that's the process that they said that formed the rocks in the earth. Now, the contrasting view of that is that that everything was created in 6 days. Now, I have to say there's 7 different theories in creation alone. You have old Earth versus young Earth. You have de-age versus progressive. You have others that we won't get into here, but the Earth was created, and it has an appearance of age. But what's the common thread and the common theme is that there was a flood, and the flood is a more reasonable, logical explanation and a model for what we see now in the geological record and the fossil record, that this thing was not laid down over millions of years and eons of time, but it was laid down very rapidly by the flood and deposited all these strata and layers very rapidly, and the fossil record that we see today. That's why there is no evidence of evolution past the Cambrian, all the way up through the layers even today. There is what they call stasis, which means that there's nothing being evolved. It's all records of dead organisms that can't prove evolution. So you have this explosion of life in the Cambrian, and then there's just a record of dead organisms in the fossil record. A bat is still a bat. Scorpion is still a scorpion. A clam is still a clam. We still have these same creatures today. The coelacanth is a perfect example of that. They said that was Jurassic. It lived during the time of the dinosaurs. It went extinct. They found it in the fossil record. Yet, fishermen off the coast of South Africa in the 1940s caught a living coelacanth. And they let it go before the scientists could get it. And they said, hey, next time you catch one of these, let us know. It was some 15 years later. They finally caught one. The scientists said, we can't believe it. This is supposed to be extinct. But what they didn't realize is these creatures, these coelacanth fish, they look prehistoric. And by the way, they claimed that because they look so prehistoric in the fossil record, they said, well, those fins were used to grow limbs, and they crawled out on the earth, and they became terrestrial creatures. And then they didn't want to become terrestrial, and so they went back in the ocean and became whales. It's some kind of fallacy and fantasy and made up, story that they. But look, the coelacanth is still a coelacanth in false record. It has not changed, although it looks prehistoric. Those fins were never limbs; they're still fins, and they're vertical feeders. So they're stabilizing fins because they're vertical feeders, and they live some 1,000 feet down. National Geographic a couple of years ago sent some divers down there and filmed them for the first time in history. A school of them. They're huge. They're beautiful creatures, beautiful fish. But the point is that there's evidence for a global catastrophic flood called the deluge or the Noahic deluge, and there's just not evidence for this uniformitarian process that they claim that the evolution brought all this about. So there is a very contrasting view, and there is evidence that we see all around the world for a worldwide flood.
Yeah, I mean, that it just seems for you to just find actual seashells up in the mountains and stuff. I mean, I don't know what what's the secular explanation that they have? Like, how do they try to explain that? Do they have one, or
Well, I think they tried to say that, there was a localized flood from the Black Sea, which is nearby, and that flooded regionally or locally. And look, they tried to give an explanation on this, but they discount all the evidence worldwide for a global flood. They discount the fact that there is index fossils. What's interesting is when I was coming down Mount Ararat, when I was descending the mountain, Dr. John Bryant, who was one of our scientists, he is licensed as a geologist and a cartographer and a geophysicist. He did our ground penetrating radar. And on the way down, he noticed in the basalt rock, there's some huge boulders. It's all basalt, okay? And embedded in this basalt rock is wood. And Dr. Bryant looked at that and he said, look at this. This is wood embedded in basalt rock. And I said, explain that to me. He said, I can't. As a geologist, I can't explain it. He said, the only explanation I can give you is that this was embedded because of water and the wood being impregnated into the rock. Now, how does that happen unless there was a worldwide flood? Right. I've got a picture of that on my Facebook page. If you go to Man vs. Archaeology with a VS on Facebook, Man vs. Archaeology, I've got pictures. You'll have to scroll down, but I've got pictures from that trip on there, or you can go to my website at aaronjudkins.com. And I've got a picture of that wood embedded in basalt rock because that was a rather large piece. We saw more pieces of this, but this was one of the larger pieces that we found. So Dr. Bryant told me, as a geologist, the only explanation for this is if there's a worldwide flood. And it seems ironic that geologists and secular scientists will deny a worldwide flood on this planet when we're covered by 70% of water and most of the things unexplored in the sea, yet they'll say Mars was flooded by water in the past and say, well, we found some evidence for water, so Mars must have been flooded, yet deny there was a global flood ever on this earth. Now, explain that.
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
I'm just saying.
He's just saying, everybody. No, wow. And I think that's exactly the point with this. I mean, I've talked to some people, and, there's been some the media has sort of played up these previous Ark findings that didn't necessarily turn out to be absolutely true. And, some people just say, well, okay, so you found a big boat. What's the big deal? And I think the point is that if Noah's Ark is truly found, and if this is something that you guys are getting closer to here, then absolutely everything changes. Evolution changes, the history of the world changes, even linguistically, things, stories built into the very fabric of the human psyche. I mean, it just is a huge, huge game changer, and I think that's very exciting. And I'm sure you feel the same way as you're huffing and puffing your way up 7,000 feet.
Oh, well, it's 17,000 feet.
Is that right? Yeah.
It was probably the most physically challenging and mentally demanding thing I've ever done in my life. I nearly gave up a couple of times, to be honest. I just didn't think at 16,000 feet, the altitude hit me. I just didn't know that I was going to make it. And I got up to the summit, and then the weather was terrible. The conditions were miserable. I was miserable. It was just harsh. And this old boy from Texas ain't used to being up at 17,000 foot on a glacier. I can tell you that. You're instantly in survival mode for, just the basic essentials for survival. Warmth, heat, water, shelter, food. And, when you're at that high altitude, you're not hungry. I went 3 days without eating. I never missed a meal because I wasn't hungry. That's just altitude. You have insomnia. You battle insomnia every night. You're battling to breathe. You wake up in the middle of the night struggling for breath sometimes. It is really a harsh environment up there.
Right.
But you're right. This was an expedition that really what I think is probably the most comprehensive and scientific expedition ever done in the search for Noah's Ark.
Well, good. That's very good to hear, and I'm excited to see what you guys found in the documentary that's coming out in 2014, you say, huh, there? And we'll be able to check it out.
Yeah.
You know, if we follow you on Facebook, you know, you'll keep us updated to when that comes out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if the people go to Facebook, they can go to Man versus Archaeology with the VS, or they can go to my website, aaronjudkins.com.
Right.
I'll have it announced there. By the way, I'm thinking, people's asked me if I'm going to write a book on this. You know, I've written books, but books are very time-consuming to write.
Right.
But you know what? I wrote a journal, which is the first time I've ever journaled. And I'm thinking, people's asked me, are you going to publish a journal? And I'm thinking, you know what? If I get enough interest, I may consider it. It'll be kind of in a Grail style journal. It'll be personalized. I'm thinking about putting some photos in there, just, you know, the day-to-day count of the expedition, and really kind of be on that journey with me. It'll include the field notes, and I mean, I'm really thinking about doing it. If I get enough interest in doing it, it'll be, you know, it won't be mass produced. It won't be something like you can go to Amazon and buy. I don't think I'm going to do it like that. If I can get interest, it'll just be something that, hey, I'll, you know, personalize, and you'll have all the things, and then, you know, the pictures and some extra things in there, and I'll mail you one out. I'm thinking about doing it because people are asking me about it, but you know, I kind of like to have some feedback on it from your listeners. So if they want to go to my Facebook page at Man versus Archaeology and comment, hey, we want to see a journal. We'd love to have it. We'd love to order one, have our own copy. I'm thinking about doing it, but I really need some feedback on it if I'm going to do it. Plus, we're doing a contest, by the way. So if you share the page with a couple of 2 or 3 people, we'll enter you in for a free DVD on my latest documentary that I did on Hidden Mountain and the Los Lunas Mystery Stone. Boom. So we got that contest going on. Yeah.
There you go, Canary Cry listeners. Make sure to go to his Facebook there, share his stuff, get his DVDs, and hit him up for a little bit of that journal action. Now, speaking of which, now that we're talking about books, I mean, you're not just a fossil guy. You got the aliens agenda, the return of the Nephilim. Let's just get a little bit into your Nephilim stuff here. So what's your opinion with the Nephilim, and what does that have to do with anything?
Well, you know, I like your tie that you were talking about when, you know, if this is found and confirmed, it will have to look at the subject of the Nephilim in a greater light. And I think you're right on that. Because look, by the time you get to Genesis 6, the creation of the world was in Genesis 1. By the time you get to Genesis 6, it's all screwed up.
Right.
There's wickedness abounding on the earth. God saw that man's wickedness was man was great in the earth, and that every imagination and the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord repented that he made man. And this is all in Genesis 6. You can go read it. But look, by the time you get to Genesis 6, you're only 5 chapters in, and the things already, the creation's already rampant with evil. So, yeah, we have to look at this Nephilim again, and the reason I got interested in it is because, look, when you're going through the archaeological record and the history, you see evidence of these, you know, greater than normal, larger sized people with 6 fingers, 6 toes, in some cases double rows of teeth. You even see them in the North American Indian, the Native American Indians, talking about these guys, the Paiute Indians, the Sioux. My great grandmother was a Choctaw Indian. They have a legend account of the giants. And in that chapter I wrote for L.A. Marzulli in his book, On the Trail of the Nephilim, I talk about these things in the chapter that I wrote there about the Nephilim and on the trail of the Nephilim, if you will, about what these things are. Yeah, there's some evidence for this, and there's ample evidence, I might add, for the giants in history. So, yeah, Genesis 6 is going to play into this because, look, the subtitle of my book is The Return of the Nephilim,
right?
Which means they're going to be back. And why are they going to be back? And what are they doing? That all plays into the end times. And so I didn't really have that big of a focus on it. But when I saw the tie of the Nephilim and this whole UFO connection thing and the evolutionary connection associated with it, it blew me away.
Yeah.
Because when I saw that tie for the very first time, it became clear. The Bible says that we look through a glass darkly sometimes. It's the what is it? The glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search it out. Look, there's truths that when you begin to search these matters out, they become very crystal clear. And what's happening in Genesis 6 with the Nephilim is going to happen again when Revelation plays out in future history.
Right.
These guys are going to be back, the return of the Nephilim.
Right. Now, obviously, with Genesis 6, we know that it's the sons of God. Now, what is your opinion on who the sons of God were? Because, there's the Sethite view, which, most of the people listening to this show, and myself included, we reject this idea that they were just the Sethites and they married the line from Cain, and there you go. You have two lines of human, but somehow they produce these giants. But it doesn't really mean giants. It's, it just means, these evil people or whatnot. Again, that doesn't really play out in my mind with my study of the Bible. But what is your opinion on who the sons of God were? And part two to the question is, do you think they are part of the return of the Nephilim as well?
Very good question. I've done a lot of research on this when I was writing the book, co-authored with my my colleague, Dr. Michael McDaniel, who brought the theology and the eschatology side of the book, which was a great combination, by the way. But we talk about this in the book. We talk about the line of Seth theory. And look, when we go through that, you're going to understand that this godly line of Seth argument, there is no such thing in the Bible as a godly line, especially from Seth.
Right.
So if that qualifies to be a godly line, then there has never been an ungodly line of any kind on the planet. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
The Bible never defines the sons of God as a godly line. The sons of God are defined in, go to Job chapters 1 and 2, and go to Job chapter 38. The sons of God, it tells you who they are. They are the ones that are present before Adam is created in Job chapter 38.
Right.
And they're also those gods of Psalms 82 and 89.
Yeah.
And note that there's a flood context in there, by the way. Go to Psalms 82, verse 1, and Psalms 89, verse 6. And note the flood context. These sons of God were around before Noah. And what they are doing is they are the sons of God are the angels. The sons of God are described to us in the scripture as those angels, and the angels that were present even before creation. Now, we know a third of those angels fell. We describe all this in the book, Alien Agenda, The Return of the Nephilim. But the line of Seth theory does not hold any truth to it. There is what they call the fallen angel view. That's the other theory that is called the fallen angel view, that the third of the angels fell and they intermarried with the daughters of men, and those offspring, the physical offspring, became the Nephilim. And that's where we see that the Nephilim first appear in Genesis 6. So these are the offspring of the fallen angels that fell with Lucifer in Genesis 6, verse 4. And it talks about the giants in the earth, and in those days that they bear children into the to the daughters of men, and they became old men of renown.
Right.
And so we walk you through what the Nephilim are, how they got here. Matter of fact, the book of Enoch, which was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, by the way, talks about the 200 watchers that came down on Mount Hermon and what they were doing. It names every one of them specifically, and that sin that they were attributed to specifically with men, what they were doing. They were imparting forbidden knowledge to man to thwart them from worshiping the true creator.
Right. Our audience is probably pretty familiar with those things. And yeah, I mean, they talked about cutting of the root and dashing, a child in the womb. And I mean, just terrible things that are going on there, which is quite incredible when you think about, in my opinion, the sons of God are, the term with B'nai Ha Elohim being the Hebrew, it means a direct creation of God, because,
yes.
It says that Adam was a son of God, distinct from the only begotten Son of God, which of course Jesus is. But now, okay, so I'm trying to, try to get a grasp of this, and I know some people have struggled with this idea as well. But how do we understand, as far as the sons of God, were they physical beings, only physical beings, as far as, just as physical as you and I? And if so, are we talking about a pre-Adamic race? Or are we talking about maybe perhaps some spiritual beings that left their domain, as some parts of 2 Peter and Jude describe, left their domain to become physical beings, and therefore, them mated with human women? What are we talking about? What is your opinion on who these guys were, as far as, because it says, like you mentioned in Job, that they were around at the creation, so, yes. Are they physical? Are they just spiritual? Are they both? What is your opinion?
They can be both. They're created celestial. Now, the Bible says that things are created terrestrial, which is what we are. We dwell on the earth, and things celestial. So, as we are created a little higher than the animal kingdom, which God gave dominion over, He gave Adam dominion over the animals in the earth. The angels are created in an order just higher than us. They are created spiritual. They are not flesh and blood. They were created. That's why there is no redemption for the fallen angels, because God came to earth in the form of Jesus Christ, in the form of man, flesh and blood, who redeemed mankind by that redemption of his blood on the cross, which can never be done for the angels.
Right.
That's why in the book of Enoch, they said, hey, they begged Enoch, go before the Lord, and because we committed a grievous sin, see if there's any way for us, any hope, any redemption. And Enoch said, you know what? All right, I'll go do it. But, I don't know. He came back, said, there is no redemption for you.
Right.
That's why the fallen angels can never be redeemed. Now, the reason I say they're both is because they were created celestially, but they can take on physical human form. The Bible says that we entertain angels unaware.
Right.
They're always in the Bible in the Old Testament. They're not described with angels with wings, although there are different classifications of angels, such as a seraphim who have 6 wings. These angels are always wingless males, and they always appear in human form. Matter of fact, in the Bible talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, and the men of the city went out and said, "Who are these two strangers?
Right.
Let us in that we may know them." To them, they didn't look like angels; they looked like two strange men that came into the city. Strange men, that just foreign men, people that weren't part of that town or area. And look, the angels had to blind them so they could get out of there. Abraham entertained angels and said, hey, asked them to stay and eat a meal with them. Jacob wrestled an angel and refused to let him go until he was blessed, right?
Right.
These things can appear physically. Here's what happens in Jude, though, chapter 1, verse 6. Those angels that said that left their first estate, they did not keep their first estate, but left their own habitation because they were going after strange flesh. They committed a sin that they were never supposed to do. They cohabited with the daughters of Adam. And because of that, they were going after strange flesh, and they created this race of Nephilim, which polluted the deep. Look, the Son of God can never come through a virgin birth if your genetic line is through a demonic fallen angel line. That's just not going to happen.
Right, exactly.
So in Jude it says they left their own habitation, and when they did, they can never go back. They were stuck in that physical form. They can never go back. And they died physically. But those spirits became disembodied spirits who always seeks habitation. That's why when the demon of demoniac came out and met Jesus when he sailed on the other shore of the Sea of Galilee, he came out and he said, hey, don't torment us before time, send us into the pigs, because they're always seeking embodiment. That's disembodied spirits. But the angels can come in physical form. And there's no question about that. That's biblically in the Old Testament lines it out very clearly. But they are celestial beings, when they're able to, when these fallen angels are able to do the same thing, they can transform. But when they left their habitation, they left it for good, and then they were trapped in a physical state at that point. Not all of them did that, by the way.
Right.
But does that answer your question on the sons of God? And by the way, let me just add, the sons of God. You said Adam was the son of God. Yes, he was. But look at the definition of the sons of God and the spelling. The little s, sons of God, and the capital S, Son of God. So there is some difference between the two, between Adam being a son of God and between the angels, sons of God.
Right.
And the Bible says that the sons of God shouted for joy at the creation. Those angels shouted for joy. So we walk you through this whole thing about what this is, the sons of God and the Nephilim, how that all ties in the book Alien Agenda, the return of the Nephilim. And we not only talk about that, but we talk about the history, how the UFO phenomenon plays into that. We talk about are they natural or supernatural? We talk about the Sphinx and the cherubims and how that plays in and this forbidden history, and then how this is all going to play out in the future. And I think it just is a different perspective on this that not many are talking about. There's a few of us talking about it, but I think this book gives direct answers. I really do.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're the few of us that are talking about it are some corners are calling us heretics, but of course, 1 Corinthians 6:3 says that Paul tells us that we're going to judge angels. So, when Adam was created, it's possible that Adam was actually higher than the angels, because, I believe that these sons of God and these other angels were supposed to serve man to some extent. And, Satan didn't want to really do that. And so he convinced a third of the angels to follow him and say, hey, no, I'm supposed to be the highest created angel here, not this Adam thing. And, I think the rebellion sort of started there. But, just wrapping it up here, moving towards the end, now the end times. Now, you do believe that these sons of God are returning as well, that they are going to, these fallen angels are going to remanifest? Are there angels that are going to leave their estates again and cohabitate with women? Do you think it's already happening? What's your opinion there?
Oh, well, yeah, make no mistake about this. We write about this in the book, in the last chapter called The End Game, because, the fallen angels, sure, they're going to play a role into this. Because look, there's the last, there's the coming battle of Armageddon and the tribulation, and this whole prophecy that's given in Daniel, that says that the Antichrist will cause craft to prosper in his hand and will magnify himself, and right. And look, there's things that's going to be happening that God's going to send them a strong delusion that they should believe the lie. It doesn't say a lie, it says the lie. They're going to believe the lie. And I think the UFO and the fallen angels are playing a part into that, because it's a foreshadow of the great deception to come, of the lie that's going to come. It's a foreshadow.
Right.
And so what we're seeing is the Nephilim going to be back? Is the fallen angels, what are they doing? Yeah, you know what? I think they're already doing it. Because instead of doing it like they did in Genesis 6, look, they're doing it a different way now. All they have to do is, you know what, to those people that they can. And by the way, Christians are not susceptible to this. And we write about an account about a lady who was abducted who claimed to be a Christian. She was the only case that we could find. All the rest of them were not Christian. And she said she was abducted. She gives a story, but turns out that later she recanted. She said, you know what, I really wasn't a Christian after all. But when she wished for an encounter, number one, she wished for it. And when they came, she just gladly gave herself over, and they had control of her. What they're doing is they're taking seed. They're taking seed from people. They're taking it against their will. They're very malevolent. James Carman, who's the director of The Hidden Hand, interviewed me, and he asked me this question: who do you think they are? And I said they are malevolent in nature and evil in origin. And they are. 3 to 5% of these cases that cannot be explained by natural or military or civilian aircraft. 3 to 5% of these cases are unexplainable, and they are terrifying events. Terrifying. We detail some of these in the book, and we let people know what's going on. They're doing it again, but they're not doing it like they did in Genesis 6. They're doing it in a different fashion. They're just abducting people and taking seed.
Right.
But they are gearing up. Think Lord of the Rings here for a second with me. They're gearing up for a battle. They're gearing up, and they're creating maybe transhumans, what's called transhumanism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe these Nephilim are going to be part of that. And that's why I think the Nephilim's going to be back. There's a particular scripture that we give, and we show you why I think the Nephilim, it's not my opinion, by the way. The Bible talks about this and spells this out. And why those Nephilim are going to be back. They're gearing up for a battle. And what people are seeing, experiencing is very real, but it is on a spiritual level. Paul says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, wickedness, rulers of darkness. Look, those are hierarchies of things that's in the spiritual realm. Satan is the prince of the power of the air. And just as there's hierarchies in heaven, you have a king, and then you have the prince, and then you have the hierarchy of the kingdom, and we're part of that kingdom, by the way. But there's a kingdom of darkness, and they have a hierarchy. They have the generals and the soldiers. It's all what I like to say, L.A. Marzulli calls the cosmic chess match. This is all being geared up. And look, those are principalities and powers and all that is given that Paul spells out. Those are hierarchies of powers. And we have to understand, just as in Daniel, there is a spiritual battle going on here. When Daniel prayed and he said, and Gabriel came and said, hey, I came the very first day to answer the prayer, but I was withstood 1 in 20 days. And now, he said, I was withstood by the prince of Persia. And now I got to go help Michael because now the prince of Greece comes. These are principalities behind nations.
Right. Yeah.
And there's principalities behind America, behind all the nations. And there's things going on behind the scenes that we don't see. But this is a very spiritual battle. So yeah, this is all going to play in. It's happening because, look, Satan wants to usurp the throne. He wants to be just like God. In those 5 I wills in Ezekiel, I will be like the Most High. I will sit on the sides of the north. I will be worshipped. Those 5 I wills in Ezekiel,
I think it's
he has
Isaiah.
usurped the earth. Well,
yeah, it's Isaiah, but go ahead. Yeah, that's
it
the
may
5
be
I wills.
Isaiah. And I stand corrected on that. But look, Satan has usurped the earth temporarily, but the coming king is coming back to take it back and take possession of it. And not only the earth, but the heavenlies as well. And when this happens, this is all going to play out in the book of Revelation, which I believe we're rapidly approaching the end times. And we have to prepare our hearts, not just physically in our families and our minds. We have to prepare our hearts and make sure that we're doing everything we can and that we're right. Because when this thing comes to pass, it's going to be bad. It really is. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. But there's hope, and we offer hope in the book. There's always hope. And the hope is, just like that Noah's Ark was a testament to people who could have missed the coming judgment in Genesis, there's a hope that people can get on the coming ark, and that is the salvation of Jesus Christ, and miss the coming judgment that's going to come on this earth. And so that's the message of hope. It's the gospel of the grace of God. That is the good news of Jesus Christ, and that he is alive, and he's resurrected, and he is our only way out. He's our salvation and redemption, and only by him can we call on God. And that is the message of hope. And we have power through his name over everything that comes against us, not by our own self, by our own means, or by our own will or power, but through the name of Christ, we have power to overcome and live a victorious life.
Absolutely, yeah. And, it's really cool to hear an archaeologist out there looking for Noah's Ark, but then behind it, all this theology that seems to line up with a lot of where we are and a lot of our thinking on this show, which is very cool. And so we appreciate you being on the show. Basil, you want to wrap things up here?
Oh, sure. There you go. We'll make sure to get on the ark, everybody. Aaron, thank you once again for being on the show. This is just fantastic talking with you for the second time, double doozy here.
Yeah, so it's been great. I really enjoy doing the show with you guys, and I love listening to Canary Cry Radio when I get a chance. You guys do a fantastic job, and I promote you wherever I go. So thank you for doing what you do, and keep up the great work. I really mean that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And together we will shine a little bit of a light here where it needs to be shined. And good luck on the rest of your adventures. Everybody listening now I'll consider it a personal favor if you keep Professor Aaron Judkins in your prayers as he is gallivanting around with our other friend L.A. Marzulli as they go down to Peru and check out some elongated skulls and things like that, yeah?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And keep us in your prayers. For sure on these expeditions, and that we'll stay safe. And you know what? I enjoy feedback on Facebook, so let me know about that journal if you're interested. And if you got anything that you want to share, comment, just let me know. I'm very open. I appreciate feedback from the people that follow me, and hope to keep you guys updated on the future events of what's coming in 2014.
Absolutely, yeah. Keep us posted, and maybe give us another one of those calls from Peru. Let us know how you guys are doing down there.
Oh, right on. I'll keep it real. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. So once again, that was Professor Aaron Judkins, archaeologist extraordinaire on Canary Cry Radio. Make sure to go to aaronjudkins.com and go to facebook.com and search for Aaron Judkins and check out his work. It's very cool. All right. We need anything else, Gons?
I think we're good. Did we get the website right there?
aaronjudkins.com, right?
And then facebook.com/man versus archaeology, right? Is that
right? I just said search for Aaron Judkins. I probably should. Aaron, you still there?
I think his connection got.
Did he just bail?
No. He's there. It's just not connected.
Oh, interesting.
The Nephilim got him.
Oh, it shows me he's gone.
Oh, he showed you before he showed me. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Should we call him back?
Yeah, he's there. There he is.
What's going on? What's going on? Oh, no.
Oh, my God. I felt that. It totally dropped right. I'm glad we did it at the end if I had to do it, not during the show. Thank you. So that was perfect timing. You're probably
we're like,
God,
wow, he's just really in a hurry to get off.
Okay, that's embarrassing. I was like, where did it go? It just dropped. Anyway, well, hey guys, thanks for having me on again. I enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun.
Cool.
Absolutely,
Yeah. Thanks for
man.
coming on.
Same here. Always a pleasure, and keep us updated on all your stuff.
Okay, thanks guys.
All right.
Take care.
All right, God bless. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed by the authors and guests on this program are not necessarily those held by the hosts of Canary Cry Radio or its community.
Make sure to visit canarycryradio.com for show notes, episode archives, forums, and more.
You can contact us by clicking on the contact tab or emailing us directly at canarycryradio@gmail.com.
Please leave us a voice message by clicking the tab on the right side of canarycryradio.com.
Make sure to let us know if it's okay to play your message on the air.
Make sure to rate us and write a review on iTunes. Give us a thumbs up on Stitcher.
If this episode touched your life, your worldview, or your beating little heart in any way, please consider supporting the show financially.
You can do so by visiting canarycryradio.com and clicking on the support tab.
There, you can sign up for a small monthly donation, or if commitment's not your thing, you can make a one-time donation in any amount.
Canary Cry Radio is and will always be free, so your support is what keeps us on the air.
Make sure to catch the next episode of Canary Cry Radio, and until then, think outside the cage again.